Dr. Leipzig, I'd like to welcome you to Ithaca College and tell you how pleased we are to have your exhibit, Photographs of Jewish Life Around the World, in our Handwerker Gallery.
Thank you.
Let me ask you first how this exhibit came about. What prompted you to put this together?
Well, I've been a photojournalist for 41 years. And in the course of doing a number of assignments in different parts of the world, I happened on a few Jewish communities, one particular in Morocco, where I discovered some very poor people. And later on, the idea occurred to me that it would be a good thing to do a photographic exhibit and perhaps a book that would explode some of the stereotypes and myths about who the Jewish people really were. Mm-hmm. In most people's minds, even in some Jewish people's minds in this country, Jews or rich, Jews are all bankers or well off. And I knew that to be untrue, and so I went around the world to explore that idea.
Was it a surprise to you when you found that community in Morocco, or had you been aware?
It was somewhat of a surprise to me. I was brought up in Brooklyn in a very insulated neighborhood, a middle-class Jewish neighborhood, and everybody was an Ashkenazi Jew there. Mm-hmm. I had no idea about people outside of that community at first.
Would you just briefly recount the areas that you did visit to put together this exhibit?
Well, I started off with Ethiopia, mm-hmm. and then went on to, well, the following countries: France, Italy, Germany, Hungary, Romania, Argentina, India, Tunisia, Morocco. Did I leave anything out? And the U.S., of course. Mm-hmm. I think that, oh, Iran. Mm-hmm. I think I have it. Mm-hmm.
In your introduction to the exhibit, you mentioned the fact that in visiting these communities, you found that you had the feeling you were visiting family. Could you explain why that was?
Well, I guess the idea for the exhibit had two purposes. One that I already told you about, and the other kind of a roots search for me. And although these people in different parts of the world were so different from anything I was familiar with, I almost always felt a strong connection. Mm-hmm. And there was one man I met in Ethiopia who was a high priest, a Kohen, and who looked exactly like the man who used to play pinochle with my grandfather, except he was black and that man was white. And things like that kept happening all through my experience traveling around.
Did he play pinochle?
No, he didn't play pinochle.
Did you find that there was a commonality in these Jewish communities? Was there something that would be true for a Jewish community in Tunisia and a Jewish community in Hungary and a Jewish community in the U.S.?
Well, two things, I think. Mm-hmm. One, of course, for those people who are religious, and I'm not. Mm-hmm. For those people who are religious, there was the religion, which was basically the same, although it did have different aspects to it. In Ethiopia, for example, there was a holiday called the Segat, which has nothing comparable anywhere else. And in India, the synagogues look very different than the synagogues in the United States or Tunisia, the same thing. However, that's only one aspect of it. I think that most of the people I felt were Jewish who had a common ethic, mm-hmm. who felt that it was important to love thy neighbor, as Hillel said. And this, to me, was one of the most important things.
The exhibit is certainly, for me, an eye-opener in seeing the range of Jewish communities. Have you found that your audiences for this exhibit in the 4 locations that had appeared before Ithaca have had a similar response to the exhibit, and have there been other significant responses?
Well, it was a surprise to me when it opened at the Nassau County Museum of Fine Arts. The response was overwhelming. Both Jewish and non-Jewish people came to see it. And I would come in occasionally to the museum to see how things were going there and discover people standing in front of certain photographs and crying. It was obviously the emotional things that I felt had communicated themselves to these people too, and that was kind of rewarding for me.
I would think so. Let's talk a little about you. Did you set out as a young man to become a photographer? Was that your goal in life?
No, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I was growing up. As a matter of fact, I wandered around. I actually quit high school. This is a shock to some of my students from time to time when they discover that I don't have a doctorate or a master's or a bachelor's and not even a high school diploma. But I didn't know what I wanted to be until I had an accident and lost the use of my right hand for a while. And I decided to take up photography. I took a class at a place called the Photo League. And I knew from almost the beginning that I was going to be a photographer. It was absolute.
What was the next step then? What do you do once you discover you want to be a photographer?
Well, I was taking this class and I started doing photography. And there's no better way to become a photographer than doing photography. And then after about 6 months of work as a photographer, I got a job on the newspaper PM, which was a very good newspaper for photographers. We had a lot of leeway. We did a lot of work in photography. And it was a solid grounding for me. I learned a lot. And from there on, I went to IMP for a short while and then started freelancing. And I worked for most of the publications, Life, Look, This Week, Sunday Times, Fortune, many of the companies like AT&T, Texaco, U.S. Rubber, Marathon Oil, and a lot of the foundations like the Ford Foundation and American Cancer Society. I worked wherever there was work and did the kind of work that I particularly enjoyed doing, which has to do with people. I have a strong point of view about people in the humanist tradition.
And now you're dealing with people in the classroom.
Yes, that was the second accident in my life. My wife went to a supermarket and met somebody from the art department at Post, and she asked my wife, do you think Arthur would like to teach? And my wife said yes, and came home and told me about it. And so I discovered a totally new field, and I love them both.
Good, good. In doing the exhibit, if we can go back to Jewish life around the world, were there particularly difficult or exotic locations in which you had to work to put together the exhibit?
Well, many of the locations were exotic. Ethiopia certainly was, Tunisia, the island of Jerba in Tunisia, India, and there were difficulties in places like Argentina, where I was often followed by secret police. I don't know what they were concerned about, but they followed me. Some of the countries, the secret police would follow you, and they wouldn't be so obvious, but in Argentina they were very obvious.
Not very secret.
Not very secretive, no. And in certain countries like Ethiopia, where there were 4 wars going on, we had a great deal of trouble. We had to pass through all kinds of checkpoints, and there were curfews, and you had to be very careful. But that's part of the life of being a photojournalist.
How about if you're working in Ethiopia or Tunisia, are there Ramada Inns readily available when you go to take photographs?
Well, I stayed at the Hilton in Budapest, but no, not in Ethiopia. We slept in a, well, it was called a motel, but it was a grass roof hut. And it actually had a shower which trickled about a gallon every 4 hours. No, it's not the best of accommodations, and sometimes you sleep on the floor or on the ground, and that's the way you have to do it.
Are there particular photographs in the exhibit that have special meaning to you, special significance to you?
Well, yes, some of them I feel more strongly about than others. The ones that carry my feelings the strongest and that work the best from an artistic point of view, the aesthetics and the composition are all there. One of those is the Ethiopian photograph of the Hebrew class, which you used on the announcement. I feel that's a particularly strong image. Another one that I love is taken in Romania of the old lady doing the Sabbath preparation. Some of the Russian immigrant photographs coming into the country, I I feel strongly about. I could go on for a while. There are many others. Oh, another one that I really love is the old age home, the Moroccan lady asleep in the old age home. I feel that's one of my really strongest images.
Now, your grandparents were Russian immigrants?
My grandfather and grandmother on my mother's side came from the Russian, Polish, Lithuanian area. On my father's side, my grandparents came from Austria. And my grandfather came to this country from my mother's side in 1880 and worked on the Brooklyn Bridge. That was his first job, building the Brooklyn Bridge.
Let me ask you a more philosophical question about photography in general, and it is probably a question you've been asked before, and that is, do you consider yourself an artist as a photographer?
Oh, but definitely. When I first started in photography, we used to debate this question a lot. It's almost like asking the question, how many angels can stand on the head of a pin? And I took a class with Paul Strand, and he gave me the answer that stopped the debating thing for me. I know there are still many artists in the more traditional media who have difficulty accepting new things, and photography being one of them. It's almost like they think God really handed down 11 commandments to Moses, and the 11th one was only painting and sculpture is art. But Strand told me, and something I believe strongly, he said it's irrelevant. There are only artists. And what medium the artist used, his choice, and all the rest doesn't matter. Sure, I'm an artist.
Do you think that the medium of photography was particularly effective to do what you set out to do, which is to enable people to understand that there are Jews of all types in all places? Oh,
yes, sure. It's a medium of our time, and it has an immediacy that nothing else can give it. If you did a painting of black Jews in Ethiopia, I'm sure it'd be of interest, but how believable would it be? Photography makes it very believable.
That's an interesting perspective, that it carries with it a credibility that perhaps some of the other media don't.
Right. I think that it's been so ever since the beginning, since the first war photography, for example, which was Civil War. When Brady and Gardner photographed in the Civil War, people for the first time began to feel what war was all about. And I think certainly through the Vietnam War, we learned a great deal through photography.
What's your next venture?
Well, I'm exploring one now. I'm not sure how well it's going, and it's always a risk when you start something new. I'm trying to do a photo essay on the new poor. I want to, not the people who were chronically poor, have been around with us for a long time, but the people who were up until this current depression, either middle class or working class people who had jobs, who paid taxes, who owned houses, and now are losing their houses, and I want to photograph and show their plight. It's not an easy thing to do, but I'm going to try.
Do you have any plans to expand this exhibit to explore new Jewish communities in the world?
Yes, it's always been my goal to go to the Orient, because I know about Chinese Jews and Japanese Jews and Jews in Singapore, and I want to go there, and hopefully this summer I'll go there, and if I can make arrangements to get into the right places in China, that's what I'll do.
Are those large communities of Jews in the Orient?
Not very large, no. But the Chinese group seems to be larger than most people realize. There seems to be a few thousand Jews left.
That's quite amazing. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Leipzig, for coming to Ithaca College and for talking with us in front of the cameras.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.